Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the beginning of a new chapter in Sacred Contracts written by Carolyn Myss. So we're going to start chapter 4 today, which consists of 7 different sections, none of them too terribly long. So I'm going to try to read 2 or 3 each video, hoping that like my previous chapter, I'm not breaking it up into too many videos, but also keeping in mind the time. So let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 5 is titled Identifying Your Archetypal Patterns. So we're going to be getting into the grittier part of this book. So far, I think a lot of it has been a good education, examples, and introduction into just exactly what archetypes are. So now we're going to get into more about how we can identify them for ourselves and a lot more. This book still has plenty to go. All right. The physical workaday world you live in is an archetypal theater. The substance of myths and ancient tales is constantly manifesting in the power plays, personality clashes, and competitive psychic forces that abound, even within a few hundred square feet of seemingly ordinary office space. If you think of your interpersonal relationships only in terms of conflicting egos or competition, you will overlook the spiritual significance of these everyday interactions. When you rely only on the perspectives of your first 3 chakras, chances are that you will act inappropriately, jump to conclusions, second guess others, take everything personally, and even misinterpret casual kindness for romantic affection. So your first 3 chakras are your root, your sacral, and your solar, which are considered to be the chakras that most people live in. They are your more grounded chakras, whereas from the heart chakra up are your more spiritual, and the heart is supposed to connect all of the chakras. Most people live in their root chakra, which is a place of fear, of lack, and also in their sacral plexus, which has to do with your self-esteem and your self-worth and things like that. So most people in society live in the lower 3 chakras, and our goal is to harmonize and live in a balanced way throughout all of them. And in the next chapter, we're going to go over the chakras, so you will know more if you don't know very much right now. You have 12 primary archetypal companions. 4 of them are survival archetypes, the ones we just read about. The child, victim, prostitute, and saboteur, which everyone has. You also have 8 others, personal archetypes that you will learn to identify in this chapter. They might include ancient figures such as the goddess, warrior, king, and slave, or contemporary ones such as the networker, environmentalist, and political protester, which are actually variations on ancient themes like the messenger, steward, and rebel, respectively. The networker, for example, became a modern-day archetype once people began to associate certain behavioral characteristics with that name. Yet it has mythic origins stemming from the ancient Greek god Hermes, on whom the more familiar Roman god Mercury was based. The patron of heralds and a bringer of good fortune, Hermes also served as messenger of the gods and was reputedly the only being able to find his way to the underworld and back again. With his winged sandals and magical herald staff known as the caduceus, Hermes/Mercury spawned a number of descendants through the ages, each reflecting the social structures and needs of an age's civilization. Among various primal tribes, certain figures took charge of communication through talking drums, smoke signals, and long-distance runners, marathoners, who delivered messages from tribe to tribe. As the demand for communication through letters and other documents grew, the figure of the messenger emerged. Telegraph and telephone operators, the postman, and the journalist shaped the face of Mercury for still later generations. Now we have radio and television networks and those who network via the internet. All of these media represent Mercury's ability to don the wardrobe of the day for the sake of delivering the message. And so, although the term networker may conjure up people who maintain extensive email lists for spreading political and social warnings, it is linked inextricably to the messenger of the gods. Later in this chapter, a series of questions will help you determine the 8 patterns that have the greatest influence in your life. Identifying your archetypal patterns is basically an enjoyable process because you examine the experiences and relationships of your life from new and often extraordinary perspectives. As a rule or a clue, the archetypes that will guide your sacred contract have a direct influence on your physical relationships with people. Identifying your archetypes can also be somewhat challenging, since you may need to reevaluate your life as you view your relationships and experiences symbolically. For instance, you may come to recognize that you are involved in a relationship not as a lover, but as a rescuer. This realization can help you understand why your romantic bonds tend to fray easily, since mixing rescuer with romantic energy produces codependency. It can also be liberating because it enables you to re-envision your entire relationship history. Instead of believing that he has failed at one relationship after another, the rescuer begins to get a symbolic understanding of why he is drawn to people who need help, rather than to people who can take care of themselves. He understands his feelings of rejection as behavior that is inherent in the pattern, an inevitable consequence of conflicting agendas rather than as a personal rejection. This shift in perspective from the personal to the symbolic offers the opportunity to heal the wounds of personal history and to re-script an entirely new future. For instance, a man named Kurt knew that he tended to be unfairly critical and judgmental of other people, yet he nonetheless wore his opinions openly on his face. Then one day, an acquaintance confronted him and told him that his scornful attitude only caused people to feel the same way toward him. "I was deeply humbled," Kurt said, "when this guy told me that his circle of friends, my targets, so to speak, would be delighted to have me as a friend, with the condition that I be open to finding something to appreciate in each one of them. I didn't know what to say, and I actually started to cry. The guy walked away, and I was washed over with intense feelings of humiliation and self-loathing. I was judging myself with the ugly harshness that I had always applied to others, and now I knew how that felt. I didn't think I would ever be able to forgive myself or even approach this group of people who were now saying, 'We would like to like you.' I had to see the lesson in this event for me. I had to find a higher purpose because I sure wasn't finding my comfort on the ground level. I decided to use my symbolic sight. I came to see that from an archetypal point of view, my child energy was an orphan and the other people were a family apart from me. I was jealous of their bond and their love and support for each other. I resented the fun they had together and how they could tease each other, nickname each other, and create a history together. Now they were adopting me, and it was up to me to sign the adoption papers. So I did. I got together with them one evening for dinner, and that was the beginning of my finally having a family of friends." Learning to read the language of symbols has a positive effect on your self-image and energy. You do not have to wait for a crisis to see things symbolically and accurately. You can start wherever you are. You can gain as much spiritual insight from examining the archetypal patterns that influence the enjoyable parts of your life as you do when you look at those that are operating during troubled times. Every aspect of your life is worth understanding from a symbolic perspective, including why you have a good relationship with a particular person or why you are involved in an especially rewarding line of work. When you start working with your archetypal patterns and interpreting their role in your life, do not exclude looking into all that makes you glad you're alive. I am forever reminding people that their spiritual life should not be only about trying to figure out why bad things have happened to them and finding the right prayers to get out of their dark nights. The emphasis in too many people's lives has more to do with healing than with enjoying life. A delightful woman once remarked to me, I have a muse archetype. I adore inspiring people, like I'm landing where heaven wants me for a moment, so that I can whisper a positive word or thought into someone's mind about believing in their own talent. I've read the mythology on the nine muses, the daughters of Zeus, and I believe that somehow I am a descendant of those archetypes. Nonetheless, people are far more motivated to begin an inner journey as a result of a crisis in love or work than when all is right with their world. That's so true. Whatever your motivation, the first step is to get to know your own archetypes. Okay, now the next section, where to begin. Let me take a peek at how long it is. Not very long. Okay. Remember that archetypes are all essentially neutral patterns of the psyche, neither positive nor negative. Even those to which you initially have negative associations, such as the prostitute or victim, have strengths that are psychologically helpful. Keeping that in mind, you can begin to reflect on the archetypes in your immediate personal family of 12. Perhaps you've already become aware of some as you've been reading this book. If not, you can begin reading through the list of archetypes in the appendix, marking off or writing down in your journal the names that resonate most powerfully with you. Even though this is a rational process, please remain open to intuitive feelings, hunches, and impressions as you proceed. You may find it helpful to make your selections at a time when you will be relatively free from distraction and to clear your mind through meditation, prayer, or deep breathing before you proceed. And I will take a look at the appendix and possibly I can give that information to you. Let me just take a peek because I have not looked back here. That's notes. Here's the appendix. So I wouldn't go over the details of each one, but what I would do is give you the name of the archetype. And if you wanted to look that up, you could. This simply would just take too long. It's like, it's like a little mini dictionary going from A to Z. I'm only on M and I still have quite a ways to go. So I will mark this part and I will read them out loud at the end of this section that we're reading. So let me just make a little mark right here, and I'm just going to say the names really quick and then move on. You will initially find that you identify with more than 8 archetypes. This is natural and part of the process of determining which energies are most closely related to your own. We can relate to almost every archetype because our psyches and spirits are connected to the great collective of all the archetypal patterns. During my seminars, when I ask the audience how many can relate to being a rescuer, a servant, or a martyr, among others, most hands go up. Many people resonate to this trilogy because our culture has replaced its emphasis on the virtues of the rugged individual with an obsession about victimization. These 3 archetypes are patterns of disempowerment, but don't confuse occasional feelings of martyrdom or a few incidents of rescuing people who were in emotional or financial crisis with an archetype. We have all helped people and we have all had martyr attacks. Keep your attention on identifying archetypal patterns that are consistent rather than occasional forces in your life. Choose at least 8 primary archetypes about which you feel very strongly, but also include a few secondary ones to which you feel a connection. Choosing your archetypes demands that you stretch your imagination and draw on your capacity to assess yourself honestly. Your conscious mind may completely overlook an archetype that is one of the most forceful in your life because it doesn't want to admit its influence or doesn't recognize one of its variations. A man in one of my workshops, for instance, strongly radiated the energy of the lover archetype. He had not chosen that archetype as one of his intimate 8. However, because he thought of the lover as an exclusively romantic or sexual energy, Sorry, I read that as if the sentence was going on. So intimate 8, however, because he thought of the lover as sexual or like a romantic energy. So he didn't see that for himself. And end of sentence. Okay. Quiet, passive, and shy to the point of being withdrawn, he worked as a poet. For him, the object of his love was life itself. In his verses, he saw only beauty in the world. Although he lived alone, hermit, it wasn't because he was antisocial or angry at the world. He wanted his life to be simple and wanted to live reflectively, which is the mystic. The lover in him was a spiritual force, and his writing expressed the heightened love described in the poetry of Rumi and the Song of Solomon. So I don't know how familiar you may be with tarot cards, but tarot cards, a lot of them, what you're seeing on the card, are archetypes. You have the hermit, you have the queen, you have the joker, you have the hangman, you have the mystic. So a lot of archetypes are found in the traditional tarot deck. Okay. I urge you to think about archetypes from both their literal perspective and their symbolic. And their symbolic, hidden, absurd, and even frightening potentials. Look at the energies of your life as a poet would. First, work with your intellectual conception of an archetype and stretch your associations as far as you can. Then step into the second column, perceptions, into your internal crucible to test if you have the right mix. If you can ask someone you trust for feedback on your choices, you can also get some fascinating feedback and insights. Be aware that you may be drawn to certain archetypes because you like their connotations or physical appearance. You may find it attractive to think of yourself as a mystic, Midas, healer, king, goddess, or visionary. But liking the sound of an archetype is not the same as having a spiritual bond with it. To help you determine the authenticity of a bond, you need to be honest with yourself as you answer the questions I've prepared for you. You need to assess the quality and depth of a possible archetypal bond as thoroughly as possible. If, for example, you are drawn to the healer archetype, pause for a moment and ask yourself, why? Be aware that working in the field of health services or complementary healing does not automatically make you a part of the healer archetype. I can absolutely agree with that. I work in healthcare, but I work with a lot of people who maybe should not be in healthcare. They lack compassion, they lack empathy. You can tell for sure in that field who is there because they simply don't want to look for anything else, or because of the money, or because of the school, the time they spent on school to go to do that for a living, or the money they spent on school to do that for a living. It shines through. It doesn't automatically mean that you're a healing and, you know, that fits for you. All right. Doesn't automatically make you part of the healer archetype. The servant might be more appropriate, or even the rescuer. You will need to respond affirmatively to the questions regarding this archetype's role in your life before you can conclude that the healer is one of your companions. The appendix can help you clarify archetypal characteristics. If you already know your 8 primary and 3 secondary archetypal companions, note them in your journal. If you need some help, refer to the appendix for ideas. All right, so as I said, the appendix goes from A to Z, obviously in alphabetical order. There is an explanation next to each one, and I can't give those to you because they're long. So I will give you what's in here, and if you obviously want to look it up, you can. I'm sure you can. You don't even have to listen to this part if you don't want to. Just look up all archetypes. The gallery of archetypes, that's what this is called. So we're starting with accountant or scribe, actor, also see artist, addict, Adonis or see God, advocate, alchemist, amateur, Amazon, ambassador, analyst, anarchist, anchorite, angel, apprentice, arbitrator, architect, artisan, artist, athlete, Attila, attorney, author, avenger, beggar, black widow, bon vivant, builder, bully, burglar, caregiver, Casanova, celibate, chef, chief, child orphan, child wounded, child magical innocent, child divine, child nature, child eternal boy/girl, circa, or see femme fatale, clown, or court jester, fool, dumbling. Communicator, see networker, companion. Con artist, see thief. That's just saying see the explanation. So I'll just say the actual, now I'm not going to say see and then look at that. Okay. Con artist, consort, conspicuous consumer, copyist, counselor, courier, court jester, coward, craftsperson, crime fighter, critic, crone, damsel, defender, destroyer, detective, devotee, dilettante, or I'll say what that is because it's easier to know what the word is, amateur, diplomat, disciple, Don Juan, double agent, dramatist, also linked up with artist, dreamer, dumbling, which is also clown, emperor or king, empress or queen, enchantress, which is also femme fatale, engineer, environmentalist or advocate, evangelist, examiner, exorcist, explorer, fairy godmother, godfather, see angel, father, we have femme fatale, flirt, follower, fool, friend, gambler, gigolo, glutton, go-between, god, and we also have Adonis as the alternate, goddess, gossip or networker, gourmand, see hedonist, gourmet, see hedonist, guide, gunslinger, guru, wounded healer, hedonist, which has a lot of categories under it, hero or heroine, knight, warrior, god, goddess, homeless person, indigent, innovator, instructor, inventor, journalist, judge, king, knight, leader, legislator, liberator, lobbyist, lover, mad scientist, magician, martyr, master, matriarch, mediator, mentor, mercenary, messenger, messiah, Midas or miser, minister, minstrel or storyteller, monk or nun, mother, mystic, narrator or storyteller, networker, which is also messenger, herald, courier, journalist, communicator, see also gossip, nomad, nonconformist or rebel, nurse, Olympian, patriarch, pickpocket, pilgrim, pioneer, pirate, poet, political protester, preacher, priest, prince, princess, private investigator, profiler, progenitor, or says see father, prophet or visionary, prostitute, provocateur or trickster, puck, puppet, queen, rabbi, rebel, redeemer, renunciate, rescuer, revolutionary, right arm or companion, Robin Hood, ruler, saboteur, sage, Samaritan, samurai, savior, schemer, scholar, scientist, scribe, sculptor, secretary, seducer, seductress, seeker, seer, serial killer, servant, settler or settler, sex addict, shaman, Sherlock Holmes, sidekick, siren, slave, sleuth, snoop, soldier, soldier of fortune, spellcaster, spiritual master, spoiler, spy, storyteller, student, swindler, sybarite. It also says that's also hedonist, teacher, therapist, trickster, tutor, vagabond, vampire, victim, virgin, visionary, wanderer, warrior, weaver, wise woman, wizard, workaholic, and that's it. So each one of those has multiple meanings with it. So a mystic would also be an anchorite, a renunciate, or a hermit. So I wish I would have known this was back here. I mean, this would take several videos just to read all of these to you, you know, breaking them up. But as I said, you can look up the list of archetypes or the library of archetypes and see what you can pull up. And as we read through and we go through some of these, you may be able to figure that out based off of doing your own research and following along with this book. So we're going to stop right there. And I think I might have lost my place in the process of doing that, but that's okay. So yes, so we read the introduction and where to begin. And then in the next video, we're going to read Interview with an Archetype. And we're going to read Letters to Your Archetype. And we'll see about reading the third one. I might read all three together because we're going to go into the questions, which I would like to put all in the same video. And I want to make sure not to break that up. So we may have a few longer and a few that are a little bit shorter. So we'll figure that out as we go. So yeah, we'll stop right there. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always and as usual, take care of yourself. Take care of those around you. I love you all very much. And I will see you all again for the next few sections of Chapter 5 in Sacred Contracts. Take care until next time. Bye-bye.